If you've started preparing for the new TOEFL speaking, specifically the listen and repeat test, let me guess, this is probably how it goes, right?
Fire drills are conducted once each semester, and all residents must evacuate immediately when the alarm sounds.
All all residents must evacuate when the alarm sounds. That's all I remember.
As the sentences get longer and more complex, you understand every single word, but when it's your turn to speak, you simply go blank. You are literally at a loss for words. You don't know what to say. Maybe you forget half of the sentence or all of it. I've been there, friend. This is very familiar to me.
I can speak English fluently. I can talk to anybody. Like, what in the world? Like, I want to get native speakers to perform this task and I want to see how well they do. Seriously.
But hang on, friend, I've got good news. With enough practice and the right strategies, you can significantly improve your performance on the listen and repeat task.
By the end of the session, teams will choose one realistic sustainability goal.
By the end of this session, teams will choose one sustainable, realistic goal. Okay, you see, so I finally got a 6 here. It wasn't perfect. I mean, the first 6 questions were really good, but then this one, I knew I forgot something. But you see, using the note-taking strategy was a game changer.
And this is what I'm going to share with you today 5 strategies to master the listen and repeat task. Well, if this is your first time here, my name is Natalie. I earned an overall score of 6 out of 6 on the new TOEFL IBT test. But above all, I'm a very passionate English teacher. My mission is to help English learners navigate their way to fluency without fear or overwhelm. And this is the same thing that I do when I teach TOEFL prep. I've been helping learners for the past decade to achieve their target score on the TOEFL as well. So if you have any questions about my classes, my programs, check out the link in the description below. First off, we need to understand what the listen and repeat task is actually testing. Many students think that this task is only about pronunciation, but pronunciation is just a part of it. Honestly, the listen and repeat task measures how efficiently your brain processes spoken language. Because listen, you have to understand what you hear, hold the information in your short-term memory, repeat it immediately using the same words, and then match the speaker's rhythm, pace, and intonation. In other words, you are temporarily storing and reproducing spoken language in real time. And that's why this task feels challenging, even for students with strong English skills. Fortunately, there are several strategies that can make it much easier. I said easier, not easy, right? Strategy number 1, know what to expect. One of the simplest things you can do is familiarize yourself with the length of each question. So for example, the first sentences are relatively short, but then they gradually become longer and more complex. And knowing this ahead of time helps you prepare mentally, so you're not surprised when you reach the final questions. So rather than treating every sentence the same, expect the difficulty to increase as the task progresses. A very good way to measure the length of the sentences is to know the number of syllables in them. So by syllable, I mean the number of beats. So for example, sentences 1 and 2 usually have 9 to 11 syllables. So for example, welcome to the technology lab. This one has 9 syllables. So that is an easy one, right? So 1 and 2. Sentences 3 through 5, you have about 14 to 16 syllables. And then sentences 6 and 7, the last ones, right, have about 19 to 23 syllables. That could be up to 15 words, 15, 16 words per sentence. That's a lot. You understand why I'm emphasizing the number of syllables later on in the video, because it's actually part of another strategy. But what better way to familiarize yourself with this task than to practice a lot? This is why students in my TOEFL coaching program have access to hundreds of practice questions with instant AI feedback and personalized feedback from me. A lot of guidance from me. I've partnered with this amazing platform called Prepex, and they have so much. I've tested different platforms and this is my favorite. I just love how detailed their feedback is. So if you're my student, if you're in my coaching program, you have access, unlimited access to Prepex during your coaching program. Strategy number 2, maximize your score on the first 5 questions. One important thing many students don't realize is that each sentence is scored independently, as far as I know. So based on scoring information available so far, every sentence appears to contribute equally to your overall score. So that means that performing well on the first 5 questions can help offset mistakes on the final 2. So the bottom line is really try to do well on the first 5 sentences. If you do that, that's really going to help your score. That's probably why I was able to score 5.5 out of 6, even though I had trouble with the last 2 sentences when I took the TOEFL test a few months ago. I wasn't very familiar with this question back then. That's why I took the test as well, to be able to better help my students, because I want to be in their shoes and know exactly what they have to go through, right? And so back then, I didn't know all the strategies that I know now, but I did do well on the first 5 questions, and then the last 2 I had a little bit of trouble remembering the words, but I still scored 5.5 out of 6 because I focused on getting the first 5 questions right. Strategy number 3, use different memory techniques throughout the task. So what I'm about to share are the techniques that have worked well for me and many students, okay? But I really want to encourage you to experiment and discover what works best for you. We're all different, right? I always say there's no one size fits all approach here when it comes to TOEFL prep or anything in life. So the first strategy, okay, under this umbrella of memory strategies is repetition. So for the first few questions, I'd say 1 through 4, I often repeat the sentence in my head or whisper it quietly while I'm listening. Something like this. I want you to look at this clip.
By the end of the session, teams will choose one realistic sustainability goal.
So when I do this, this helps keep the sentence active in your mind, and it can make it easier to recall the sentence a few seconds later. The second thing I do is I count the number of syllables. Yes. So this strategy helps me reconstruct the sentence because, English has predictable stress and rhythm patterns. So if I listen to a sentence and I hear 11 syllables, so for example, the sentence, the petting zoo and animals are to the right. So the petting zoo and animals are to the right. 11 syllables. So when it's my turn to speak, I repeat the sentence while mentally actually using my fingers to count as well. So I'm like whispering the sentence. The petting zoo and animals are to the right. Okay. Yeah, this really helped me when I last took the TOEFL test. Then the other technique that I have, the third one under the umbrella of memory techniques, is chunking. I've talked about chunking before here on the channel, but basically, instead of trying to remember word by word, you can break the sentence into smaller groups of words. For example, instead of remembering the student should meet outside the library before the campus tour begins, instead of remembering every single word, you would try to group these words into smaller groups. So the student should meet, that's a chunk. Outside the library, that's another chunk. Before the campus tour begins. And why is this technique so important? Because this is what our brain does. This is how our brain processes speech. We group words into smaller chunks. But here's the thing, I'm going to be honest. I think the theory here is beautiful, and this is what I do when I'm working with students, when I'm focusing on their fluency. We talk a lot about chunks, about collocations, but for this task, I'm referring to this task, this technique doesn't seem to work really well for me, because when I try to focus on the chunks, on grouping words, I focus on the idea of the sentence, and then I end up paraphrasing or using synonyms instead of repeating the sentence. And this can hurt your score really badly, because the idea of this task is to listen and repeat what you hear. So I've tried this technique before, but I end up paraphrasing it, the sentence, every time I do it, because I tend to focus on the ideas rather than on the words. So you can give it a try. Try grouping the words into smaller chunks and see if this works for you. Maybe it works for you. It doesn't work as well for me, okay, personally. But I want to encourage you to try different techniques. And this is why I insist on practicing a lot. Strategy number 4, take strategic notes on longer sentences. And I'm going to have to give a shout out to Joseph at Noteful TOEFL Mastery. I first heard of this technique from him even before bigger channels started sharing it. So of course I would like to give credit to whom credit is due. So this technique has been a game changer. So basically for questions 5 through 7, if you only rely on your memory, I don't think it's enough. It's not for me. So one strategy that I really like is to quickly, very quickly, write the first letter of each word while I listen, just the first letter. But sometimes I'll write only the first half of the sentence, the first letters of the first half of the sentence, and then I try to rely on memory for the second half. It really depends on the topic. It really depends on how familiar I am with the topic, because if it's something that I'm not familiar with, I usually try to write down every single letter. So, but I have to be honest with you. This technique takes a lot of practice as well, because you have to get good at writing the first letter only instead of writing the whole word. Because when I first started using this technique, I would sometimes write down the whole word. Another thing too is don't become so focused on your notes that you forget to sound natural. And if you sound like you're reading, that's going to hurt your score as well, because the goal isn't to read the sentence back, it's to repeat it, it's to copy the speaker's intonation, their rhythm, their pace, how they link words together. I mean, it's a shadowing exercise, but under a lot of pressure, right? Basically, that's it. So believe me, reading too slowly or sounding robotic can negatively affect your performance. Strategy number 5, visualize what you hear. So another technique that works pretty well for me, especially for questions 1 through 4. We'll get to the final questions in a little bit, so stay there. So this technique works because I create this mental image in my head while I'm listening, and then this helps me stay focused. It's like I put myself in that situation, like I really imagine that I'm right there and somebody's giving me instructions, and this helps me stay focused. It's really hard for me to focus, especially on this type of task. I personally find that the pictures provided by ETS during the task, the ones that show up on your screen, I find those very distracting, but everyone's different. Maybe you think they're helpful. When I first started practicing, I thought they were helpful, but I've realized that I tend to get really distracted. So, putting myself in that situation, like imagine that I'm right there in the zoo or museum or university, whatever context, this helps me stay focused. So, give it a try. You've stayed until the end, so let me share a bonus tip here. I would say the last strategy for this video, really focus on improving your short-term memory, because if your short-term memory is good, everything else will be easier for you. So what can you do to improve your short-term memory? You can definitely keep on practicing the listen and repeat task. Practice shadowing, repeating what you hear, what people say to you. But remember, your brain doesn't work in isolation to your body. Everything's connected. So you need to take care of yourself. I know it's hard, but you need to sleep well. You need to eat well. You need to exercise. You need to go outside, get some sunlight. You need to prioritize your health, because if you're stressed out, if you're not sleeping well, everything impacts your brain, how it is functioning. If you need to take any kind of supplements, do so. Or at least try as much as you can to eat well, whatever that means to you, because everyone's different, right? You're also in different parts of the world. So try to focus on those foods or those things that make you feel better, strong. I'm not talking about like a sugar high or anything like that. I'm talking about things that satisfy you, that make you feel energized. I can't tell you enough how many times I've worked with students whose English is beautiful, but they are so busy, so overwhelmed that they can't focus. Well, and this is life. Life is not easy, but try your best to take care of yourself. That is also going to improve your short-term memory and will help you score well. I find that this is one missing piece in most coaching programs. This is why my coaching program focuses on test taking strategies, language development, and emotional intelligence. That's it. That's the secret. Okay. Go take your test now, or if you're feeling like you're not ready yet, I'm here to help you every step of the way. As always, if you have any questions, any comments, suggestions, drop them in the comments below. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye. Thanks for watching.